Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions live. I see a few folks popping on. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, there's a few. Oh, there's my beautiful Todd. Hi. I think actually there might be a Nathaniel in that car with you too. And there's Gail. Hi, beautiful Gail. Oh, welcome, welcome. I think there's a few more. I'm just waiting a few more minutes as people are entering in. Happy winter solstice. It's a long night and a short day, but it's a beautiful time of renewal. So I feel like it's just a magical connection that we're actually doing this soulful session live on our winter solstice. And so, welcome to the Soulful Session Live. So, my name's Jennifer Mackey. For those of you that I don't know, hi, good morning, Gail. I love the little thoughts and hearts and stuff. Oh, it's lovely to have you here. And thank you to Dave, your beautiful husband. He's just been sharing on the White Rock Sun. I have to give a shout out to beautiful Dave Chesney, Gail's husband. He developed the very first online newspaper, and it's called the whiterocksun.com. And it's just a wonderful little gem in our community of all the events and things that are going on and history of our community. And I'm just always amazed by how Dave puts a little giggle in our day and lets us know what's going on in the community. And he's been such a treasure, a beautiful friend of ours for a long time since we moved here to White Rock. And he always shares about the Soulful Sessions. And I just so appreciate being on the journey with both Dave and Gail. So I just had to do a little shout out. So even if you don't live in our community, you have to go to the White Rock, the whiterocksun.com. And it's White Rock, not that, but whiterocksun.com. And just read. There's so many cool little tidbits in there. So Nathaniel's here too. Oh, that's lovely. Our sons are both back from university and from school on Cortez Island. We are just absolutely thrilled to have our family unit back together. I know that many of you are going to be feeling that way too. This holiday season, above all else, is just about being together with those that we love and making time for friends. And along those lines, I'll just welcome everyone in kind of officially as more people are joining. My name is Jennifer Mackey, and I've had the pleasure for the last 20 plus years to work in inner leadership. What I talk about is inner leadership and inner communications, about how we better communicate with ourselves, better communicate with our families and teams when we're in the work environment, so that we can better serve the people we serve personally and professionally. And so I've worked in education and healthcare, and then we homeschooled our boys up until grade 10. And we did something called the Mad Hero Project, which was about cultivating heroism in that fun way, cultivating heroism within and in the world. And it's all kind of led to this development of late called the Soulful Way. In the last couple of years, I've started that on Substack. There's a newsletter that goes out on Tuesday that sets the tone for our soulful living. And then on Sundays, we go live with these sessions. And these are fairly new. We're about 4 in, maybe 5 in. And so right now we're working on something called Soul Vibe. And it's just a fun acronym to be able to remember how we live in this soulful place. And so we're actually at the V and the I of vibe, the energy around what we do to be able to live from this soulful place personally and professionally and everywhere in between. And so the V and the I are about venerate and initiate. And if you read the newsletter on Tuesday, I gave lots of tips. That's a free newsletter that you can sign up through Substack for. It comes right to your inbox. You don't actually have to sign up for Substack to do it. You can just read it. So in this newsletter, I talked about this venerate and this initiate, and there's some tips and tools in there. And today we're diving in a little bit deeper. So this whole idea of conjuring or connecting with the muse is that whisper within us. And we've talked lots about that in these soul vibe sessions. But to venerate is to honor that muse, that whispering, that connection, that wisdom that's always guiding us in our lives when we become still enough and when we cultivate that listening within. And then it's also about initiating that. How do we cultivate the connection with that? So honoring it and then initiating. And so really, when I think about the idea of honoring the muse within, there's some funny things that come to mind. So I often talk about not dissing the muse. And any of you that are in the creative space, you know that I'm a writer. If you're a musician, if you paint, whatever your creative outlet is, Oftentimes people talk about flowing from this place of the muse or feeling the muse kind of whisper in your ear. But I think that this happens on a far grander scale, and that's really what I'm talking about when I talk about soul's whisper, is that muse that's constantly guiding us and comes up with I'm just gonna grab some water. So this muse welcome. A few more people are joining us. Welcome, welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live. And we're talking about venerate and initiate in soul vibe, honoring our souls and initiating and conjuring the connection with that muse within. And so when it comes to honoring, that idea of it whispering constantly to us about how to guide us in our lives. And so it comes up with some really stellar ideas. But when, if you're in that creative space, you don't listen to that or you go, oh, I'll remember that idea. I'll remember that line for the song. I'll remember that line for the poem. And you move along in your busy life. Sometimes that can mean that that idea, that whispering, that amazing creative idea actually goes away. And so when we talk about dissing the muse, it's a gift when that whisper comes. And sometimes in the busyness of life in our human selves, we can let that pass us by. And we don't pause, we don't honor it, we don't take it seriously. We think, "Oh, another idea will come along." And so I don't believe in scarcity. I'd much rather focus on abundance. And another idea will come, but oftentimes not the same idea in quite the same way. And so we need to learn to listen and honor that. And this comes in all aspects of our lives. So when we're moving along in this busy season and we are going through the checkout, and this happens to me where it's happened when I've taken advantage of it and I listened to that little whisper and when I've let it go and wished I hadn't. And so when you're moving along in this busy time and you're going through the checkout and you're buying things and you see this girl looks tired, she's, trying to serve you, it's very busy, it's obviously been a hectic day, but she has a really beautiful sweater on or her hair is really pretty. And this happens for me where I'll think, "Oh, she just looks lovely. She looks like she's going through a lot right now, but what a pretty sweater." And it's so simple, but I will oftentimes now I've learned to listen to that inkling inside of me that says, tell her that her sweater is pretty. And when I was younger, I used to think, oh, I don't, maybe that's not appropriate, or maybe I shouldn't say that, or maybe that's too personal. And now I've learned as I've gotten older, as many of us do as we age, we just go with the voice. We just go with the inkling. And so, I've had this happen where I said, oh, your sweater is beautiful. And instantly, this girl who has been caught up in the busyness and the crazy of the season and probably quite a few rude customers, all of a sudden, you see her face light up and she lightens up and she smiles and says, thank you. And so now I've come to this idea that whenever I feel that voice whisper from within in the very simple way of pay the compliment, I just do. I just do. I actually stopped a girl in a coffee shop the other day. She was all dressed in this beautiful elf costume and she had striped stockings on and everything. And I just said, you look unbelievably festive and just gorgeous. And her whole face lit up. And you could tell that she said, thank you. And you know what? I just kind of wanted to have some fun, at Christmas time and just kind of get into it. And I just said, you look amazing. The muse whispers in simple and complex ways from the creative to the compliment. And so we don't want to miss that. We want to be able to connect with that and we want to be able to listen to that and we want to be able to take action in that form. So another thing that happens around this season, it's happened to me of late as well, is that the muse whispers in the in-between moments and says, family might need a little more connection. Community might need a more connection. And so these ideas come and there's so much going on in our worlds at this time that we could just say, I'm too busy, I'm too tired, I can't do it. But I've learned to listen. And I know many of you probably do too. But when this happened this season, I was actually out for a walk and I was just, in that peaceful place of listening. And I heard my dad kind of whisper into my heart, honey, your sisters need a connection. You guys haven't gotten together in a long time and you need a connection. And I felt that energy of there's so much going on. Our boys are visiting. I don't know whether I can fit it in. I know everybody's busy at this time of year. But instead of saying, I'm too busy, I actually just went with the thought and I put out the little text and I said to my sisters, how about we do high tea online? And we actually just had it the other day. And it was a little bit of struggling with the schedules of the sisters and everybody and family and travel and all of that. But we got together for this high tea online. We just did it on Google Meet and we got together for this high tea. And it was incredible to reconnect. And I felt so grateful that I just listened to that little idea, that little inkling, the muse that comes that says, connect with the people that you love and then taking it one step further to actually be able to initiate that. And then it also comes to us in ways of support for the season. And so those of you that know me or in our community, I had this little inkling about running this holiday gift campaign. And I won't get into all the details, but it was just a little thought. And I committed that it would be of ease and grace, that it would just unfold, that I would just put it out there. And we actually just drew all the names. We got about 75 bags were gifted with all the donations, and we pulled together these packages. And I just picked the names the other day. And as I was sending out the messages, the beautiful love that was just pouring across my feed in these private messages of gratitude. One gal said, I've never won anything in my life. Another friend said, I really needed this season. I'm alone. I wasn't able to buy presents for my children. This is incredible. And it's not about, really, I tell you that because it's not about us. It's about whenever you can do even something small for other people that are in need. It was just such a reminder to me that I could have very easily said, I'm just going to focus on my family this season. But because I listened to that muse that gave me that idea, it really feels like we're having the holiday season on a whole other level. And on the 22nd, we're actually going to be doing an event outside of our home for a couple of hours as people pick up their bags and just having a bit of community and, handing out cookies and stuff and just having that community connection. And so the muse in that venerate, in that honoring, in the soul vibe is about listening to those ideas that come on all those different levels, whether it's paying a compliment, it's letting someone in line, whether it's keeping your mouth closed when you feel a little cross with someone cutting you off in traffic. It whispers to you, don't go there or go there. And we want to listen to that and we want to honor that because that's actually our soul trying to drive us and guide us to our true purpose, which is to love and to play in life. And we want to cultivate that connection and that listening and that honoring because it will enlighten and enrich our lives on a whole other level. And so we want to be able to be open the door to the listening. We want to open the door to the listening and we want to open the door to play. And we want to set a whole new tone for 2026 because we're always evolving. We're always deepening our relationship with that voice within, with that wisdom, with that love, with that knowing. And then we want to be able to play and enjoy our lives and flow from that place of energy and enthusiasm to bring into our lives more of what we think about. So we only want to make them good thoughts, beautiful thoughts, enriching thoughts. Okay. So now we're moving on to I. And I is about initiating. So not just the listening and the bringing in and the welcoming and the honoring of that voice, but how do we initiate and conjure that connection? And so we open the door to play. So one of the practices that really serves me, and then now through my clients, because I have a number of coaching clients, entrepreneurs, people that are building businesses, that are taking life to the new levels all the time, this idea of welcoming and opening and conjuring this connection. So how do we initiate that? So in the book, Just One Soulful Thing that I wrote, I talk about it in more depth, but there are two types of meditation that we do. And it really is all about just cultivating a connection and a deeper listening to that voice within all the time. And so it's about the practices that allow us to hone that understanding, hone that listening, so that we can tap it more regularly in the in-between moments in the busy of our lives. So we have to be able to create systems, practices, and rituals to be able to listen deeper within and to be able to have that connection. And so there's two types of meditation that allow this and make way for this. And one is receptive meditation. So, what I mean by that is there's the meditation where you just become still, where you're just breathing, you're allowing your thoughts to go, you're coming to a place of stillness and quiet, you're just shutting out the world for a while, and you're going within, and you're listening, and you're letting go, and you're breathing, and you're letting go, and you're stilling over and over again until you come to that place of calm. And every time a thought comes in, you just let it go. And you commit to the connection with stillness and quiet so that you can better listen to yourself, to that muse, to that wisdom. And so it's just the receptive nature of whatever comes to the surface, you let it come. So sometimes for me, that's just about clearing my mind for a while and saying to my mind as it's very active, thank you so much for that thought, but I'm going to let that go for a moment. I'm just coming back. Thank you, but not now. And I come back to a place of quiet. And there's something really magical that happens in that space, no matter at what depth, whether that's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, depending on where you're at in the meditative journey. But there is absolutely science to back now something that the Sufis talked about in ancient times, but there's now the science to say how powerful that is for our minds, how powerful that is for the telomeres in our brain because they shorten as we age. It affects how we age, it affects the neuroplasticity in our minds. It allows us to come to that place of calm. There are many, many benefits. There are many benefits to that meditative process. Even in 10 to 15 minutes, it can make an incredible. There's lots of work done by Elizabeth Blackburn, and she won the Nobel Medical Prize for her work on telomeres and the connection to meditation. And so it's really cultivating that practice of just calm and then allowing what comes to come. So sometimes it's about letting those thoughts go, and sometimes it's about creating space where we can actually hear the wisdom of our souls. And that has to do with how we handle absolutely everything. Hold on one moment. Just noticed. Sorry for the technical glitch. Just noticed we need a little plug-in. Thank you for the patience. So, good thing I didn't have my eyes closed in that meditation. So, this idea that we just are receptive and we're calm and we let the world go for a while and we come to this place of peace. And then we can better hear. So, how does this practically play out? First of all, it allows all those beautiful things in our brains to kind of happen where the telomeres are lengthening. We're able to relax. We're able to listen to that voice within ourselves. And then the magic begins because what I find now, I've been doing this for many, many years and working with many, many clients that go from creating in the world from a place of what the world wants to then going to this place of stillness and then figuring out what they're really meant to be doing. And it's a very different way of creating. And so that receptive meditation is about stilling and listening. And then there's active meditation. So when we've gone to that place and we've stilled and we feel in that peaceful zone, then what I do within myself and I encourage in my clients is then to welcome in the active meditation. And that means that when we come, so some of the techniques are to breathe and still. There's a filter flowing meditation that I have on my site. There's a little, a smaller, shorter snippet for that. It's in the book, Just One Soulful Thing. And if you want any support in that, let me know. It's a really beautiful meditation of just filling and flowing ourselves, flowing with light and then letting go and then coming to a place of knowing that we're safe and then being able to flow energy out to the people around us and bring it back into us in that receptive manner. And so you can do that. And then what I also do with my clients and encourage is that counting down from 100 to 0. And so really slowly, and this is one that really works for those that don't meditate very much. So counting down from 100 to 0. allows you to slowly picture in your mind the numbers counting down, and it brings your body down into a quieter and calmer place. And it takes a little bit of practice. Some it's like 100 to 0 and you're all good to go. For others, it takes a little bit of cultivating that practice and that connection. And so you just have to work with it and stay with it and be easy on yourself as you're learning and as you're connecting. And so you go from 100 to 0, and then you're kind of in this you're in this deeper zone. And then you're able to imagine within your mind a canvas, a blank screen, a canvas. I just like the art, the art analogy, but it's a blank canvas. And then you project onto that canvas something that you deeply desire. And you will be in a more receptive state now that you're in this calm and you've been in this receptive meditation. Now, when you come to the active portion, your soul's already whispering and speaking to you. And so you're in this place of receptivity and you're in this place of calm. And then when you imagine what goes on to that canvas or that screen, things that you deeply desire in your heart of hearts, the images will come. Or if you have that thought in your mind, you project that onto the screen. You interacting with one of your clients, you interacting with a loved one, you accomplishing something, writing a book, playing a song, creating an art piece, whatever it is that your soul calls you to. You want to be able to project that onto the screen. And that's when you can cultivate that connection with your muse. And I will say that when you do this with a little bit of practice, make sure you have a journal nearby on a recorder, because what happens is the ideas start to flood in. And I've watched this with literally every single one of my clients. They're new to meditation or they've meditated a little bit. They haven't really used this practice. And then they start getting into this practice, the receptive, the calming, the practicing, just listening to that voice within. And then moving into that active meditation where you're projecting onto that screen the things that you want to bring into your life. And then actually, the biggest challenge that you'll probably find is that all of a sudden these ideas will start to come. How you should handle that client, the conversation that you should have with your child, the way that you need to encourage and support your partner. These ideas will start to flood in. And this is when we want to go back to that idea of not dissing the muse. When that muse starts to speak, make sure that you're recording, connecting, paying attention, listening, and then acting. And that's the important bit, is that you don't just listen, but you learn to act, to take action in some small or even a grand way, to move towards those visions, those ideas, those answers that come so that you can start building or elevating your life to new levels of what you are able and desirous to achieve. And so this idea of honoring the muse and ensuring that we're paying attention, we're listening, we're engaging with what comes from that muse, and then we're utilizing practices and rituals and techniques to be able to create that connection, cultivating that trust with the muse within, because it will talk to us more and more and more. And I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with that, but we can never deepen this practice enough and honoring that. So some of the changes that I've seen in my clients and even in myself. So, for instance, in dealing with children, oftentimes, especially, I was talking about in relation to our own boys, learning how to transition from being the parent to then being the real friend to our children as they age. And anyone that's gone through any kind of struggle, so this isn't just with children, but if you've ever dealt with a partner that's been struggling or you've dealt with a client that's struggling, oftentimes when people are vulnerable with us and they share all of themselves with us, we can have that understanding of that being a part of them. And so if they've had real struggles in their life, we can hold on to those struggles unintentionally, but we've kind of seen them go into that challenging place. And so we worry and we have that sense of fear and that energy. And so I've been talking about with a few clients these last few weeks about switching that around. And what I mean by that is holding someone in the space and visual knowing, like seeing them in your mind's eye, that they are confident, they are content, they are clear, they are at peace, and they are capable and courageous. And so seeing them in that way every day in that meditation, if that's your active meditation that you're trying to heal a relationship or you're trying to be more supportive, projecting that vision onto your screen, seeing them doing things that are of contentment, finding contentment and connection, and seeing them in that healthy, vibrant way, even though it might, for some, say, well, that's not where they are right now. You're envisioning that. And so there's something magical that happens. You step back into relationship having seen them as that capable, courageous, content self. And then when you engage with them, there's a different energy. You see them and talk to them as though they are capable and content and thriving in their life. Or you have this thought in your mind rather than fear that you love them, they're on their own journey with their maker, and they're going to be fine. They're going to make the right decisions. They're going to do what's right in their own life, and you trust that. And so the energy of engagement in that is completely different than you communicating from a place of worry and fear. Does that kind of make sense? And, maybe some of you are nodding in the screen or hearts maybe can fly. But that idea that when we shift the way we see someone or we shift the way we see a situation and we project it onto our screen in our minds, our canvas in our minds of what the scenario could be, and we see it with clarity over time with practice, it then changes the energetic focus of how we communicate, how we approach things, what we do, how we interact. It changes everything. And so that's what we're talking about today. Being in that honoring space of when ideas come, when that soul is trying to whisper in between the moments, and then how we initiate that through practice and true listening. And so we want to be able to cultivate these things so that we're actually moving in a direction of purpose in every moment of our lives, whether that's interacting with strangers, interacting with our family. We don't want to run our lives on autopilot because oftentimes what we've been taught, maybe by our parents, perhaps just by the world, by the hiccups and heartaches that we've experienced through our lives, we can become protected. We can become fearful. We can become fearful for ourselves, but we can also become fearful for others, which holds us back from really engaging in relationship, whether that's with a stranger and giving a compliment, or whether that's really coming and approaching a situation with a loved one where they're struggling and they just need us to listen. They need us to remember that just us being there in presence and in love is enough. But all these seemingly complicated situations of the world, both personally and professionally, can seem overwhelming until we become quiet and we go within. And that's really what this winter solstice element, I think, in nature is all about. The winter solstice is it gets darker and darker and darker. And we associate darker with going deeper and deeper and deeper within, hibernating, getting quiet, getting still, sleeping, resting, rejuvenating. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. In this vibe of energy with this venerate and initiate is about becoming quieter, stiller, listening deeper, and then engaging in the practices where we can create intentional lives. And now as we head into the sunlight, now as our days get longer and our nights get shorter, then we can bring out slowly but intentionally all of the desires that we hold for ourselves personally and professionally so that we really are aligning again and again with that voice within of wisdom, wild and beautiful and sweet, and that we are conjuring and connecting and initiating lives of purpose and intention. Particularly at this time of the season with family and friends, we've talked about this a bit in the last few weeks, that you are really caring for yourself, that you are caring for others in a way that's intentional and not overwhelming for you, so that you can head into 2026 rested, rejuvenated, moving into the light and making 2026 your best year ever. So I hope that that serves you today. We're doing a little shorter session today because I'm finding this balance within myself of spending time with family. And then also, I didn't want to miss a chance to be with all of you. Next Sunday, We will be talking. Tuesday, we'll start the theme with the Soulful Way newsletter. Next Sunday, we'll be talking about the B and E of soul vibe, of vibe and the energy. And we'll be talking about believe, and we'll be talking about engage. So how do we take this to a new level? And then I'll be off on January 4th because we'll be taking our son to the ferry as he heads back to school and our boys head back into the world. So we'll be taking a break then. And then 2026, we'll have all new themes. We're going to be doing some workshops, some group coaching. We're launching the guided journal for Just One Soulful Thing. So we'll be doing some workshops around that so we can really dive in further and deeper and more and better to all this wisdom that we hold within us, and then evolve again and again in that, as I said, to make 2026 our best year ever. Thank you for joining me live. I know this is a busy time of season, and if you're watching this recording, I'm glad you've taken the time to see it. I hope that it serves you. I'm sending love to you all. Happy winter solstice, happy coming out into the light, and happy 2026, and we'll see you next Sunday. Lots of love. Thank you for the hearts. I see them there. Mwah. Lots of love, and we'll see you next Sunday. Okay, bye.